We're good. We're ready.
Yep. We're rolling.
Awesome. Brian Henry, you're
Zach
here.
Blair.
You're here, baby.
I am here.
Unprepared. Because I made you be unprepared.
Right.
But you're always prepared.
And thanks for saving me there. It sounded like I was going to be in trouble for a second.
No. You are the friend I can talk to about pretty much anything, and you have insight about pretty much anything.
Right.
Mentally dexterous
Right.
is what I would say.
Yeah.
So I've been looking forward to just
That's
sitting
what they-
down and talking and just asking you questions.
Right. Is that what they say, like the jack of all trades, master of none?
Is that right? Is that right? I think you're doing a good job, man.
Someone told me that in middle school. They're like, you're kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. I'm like, is that like a good thing?
Yeah.
Like,
Was it a teacher or was it another student? Because that student really knows.
It was a teacher.
Can analyze.
It was a teacher.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really. Does that bother you? Because that bothers me for you.
no, it doesn't.
I'm really mad
I
right
kind
now.
of took it as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say you're a jack of all trades.
Yeah. I think a jack's better than a master, right? I don't know.
If you're playing cards, like, what's a master anyways?
Exactly.
You know, it's like, yeah. My dad's name's Jack.
Right.
I'm glad his name's not Master.
That's right.
So
So
we're good.
way better.
Yes,
I'd rather be
definitely.
there, Jack. Yeah.
Yeah. How you doing, man? What's God been teaching you in life? What you been going through?
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Teaching me, I mean, the big thing is continuing to learn to be a parent, right?
Yeah.
We've got the stretch now. Our oldest will be 15 this year, and the youngest is 2. And so parenting within those margins, it's a lot. So I've been learning a lot there. for
Parenting
sure.
within those margins.
Yeah, like the age gap
Yeah.
is big. And so you feel like you get a master, I mean, not the master, I'm the jack of all trades. You figure you get a hand on, raising kids and learning them when they're younger. And then the game just keeps changing because each
Yeah.
phase,
Yeah.
they change. And so,
What's the difference between raising, so you said 15 to 2.
right,
Okay. What's the difference between raising how old's Cora?
6.
6. 6-year-old and, now versus a 16-year-old 11 years ago?
Right. What's the difference between, I don't know that there's a whole lot different. It's pretty transferable. I think, at least in our experience, I think it's more the different personalities too. Because,
Right.
the older one at 6, totally different personality than this one at 6. So that's always the challenge. It's not only the age, it's each personality as well. 'Cause you think you got it figured out and you're like, yeah, we know what this phase will be. Like, 'cause even the 2-year-old Haley, she's just completely different personality than the other ones. And so it's always surprise.
Right.
Typically
Yeah.
a pleasant surprise because she's wonderful.
Lily
but
told me the other day,
challenging.
and I knew this, but I didn't realize it. Like Haley's, she said, well, she's a pandemic baby, so
Yeah,
she was
she
used to
is.
being just around the family for a while.
Right.
Yep. What does that mean in your terms? Because
Right.
Lily's super insightful. Did you tell her that, or like did you guys?
I don't
Lily's
know.
really smart.
She probably picked that up on her own. Yeah, Haley's a pandemic baby. She was born. She was wearing a face mask. It was crazy. She came out. We couldn't see her face yet. We had to pull it down.
and then everybody ran.
Everyone got out of there, man. Doctors, nurses, everyone fled. I don't know. What was the question? Pandemic baby. Yeah, definitely. There was a situation that changed there too. Yep. Yeah, it's just different raising a child and then raising a child in a global pandemic. Yeah, definitely makes for some challenging times.
It's that age group within the church that I've realized is we've had a harder time integrating.
Right.
Because they were just slower to
Right.
integrate and to get around other
Right.
kids.
Right. And I think fortunately for us, it was our youngest child, not our oldest. And I
Right.
think because there's so much uncertainty with your first child, you just don't know. Right. And so
Right.
the younger one,
And that's only exaggerated by, not knowing what the effects of that illness could
Right.
bring to the
Exactly.
child as well.
Right,
You
right.
know? So yikes. Yeah. So people were pretty isolated. But you guys weren't. I mean, you were, but
No, not too much.
yeah.
No.
But the kids, Haley's around people all the time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It was pretty cute this morning when I left the house. I was telling her goodbye and she ran up to the door and she's like, and I want to go with you. And I'm like, how does that like not melt you? Right. And you just go down and hug her. And I'm like, I want to take you with me. And it was really cute too. Cause we work here at HQ and I think it was earlier in the week. I was taking Cora to the bus in the morning and Haley came running. She's like, I want to go to HQ. She thought we were going to HQ and leaving her here. It's just really funny that she calls it HQ as a
That is
2-year-old.
funny.
It's really cute.
She's really smart, too.
She loves coming up here and playing. She loves hanging out with everyone.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, we love her. We love her. That's for sure. You and Chrissy are great parents and just beautiful family. You know what I think about you guys. That's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have been kind of talking internally. Our mission is pointing people to Jesus and purpose by awakening our city to the goodness of God in the new digital era. That's a mouthful, but
It is.
But the new digital era,
Right.
something that's like real passionate. You're passionate about this, something
Right.
close to your heart, and you're really focusing on a lot. And I just wanted to get your wisdom and insight on what's going on in the world right now regarding the new digital era.
Right.
So what is the new digital era? What does that mean to you?
Right. I think for me, it's kind of it's nothing new, and I think we all live in and experience it. I think it's just more of recognizing it within the terms of the context of what we do as a church. But new digital era, it's just, and for me, I think of it in the same terms of how technology has advanced over the years. And if you go back and you look at all the major seismic shifts that happened historically, they may have been slower. There may have been more time in between. Thinking of things like the printing press and different things that came, television, radio, all those things, the internet, progressively as technology changed, it changed the way that we do life on all fronts. And I think in the new digital era, that's only been expedited because things are just developing at a much rapid rate. When you look at historically of how things have developed, it's exponentially grown. Mm-hmm. Like things that we've seen in our lifetime, previous generations couldn't even dream of seeing those at all. And we just keep having them one after another after another. So this new digital era has just been really an acceleration of the technology. And for us, things being digital, speaking of being online, connecting, doing life, buying groceries. I mean, it's pretty much all shifted there in a pretty monumental way.
Yeah, everything shifted.
Right.
Yeah.
I even saw someone posted a picture, and it was from the 80s, and it looked like, I don't know what it was for. It looked like a Radio Shack ad. And the guy's like wearing headphones, holding like a camera. There's like a boom box. There's like all these electronics around him. And it's someone, put on there, all of this in your pocket now. Because it's like your phone. It was like a stack of like records and CDs and everything. It's like literally all... so if you think about that new digital era, how things have changed so much, just at a fundamental level on the way we do life.
It's so, isn't it interesting how technology has advanced, but it's also like slowed down in certain areas as well. Like we're just trying to get back to the moon.
Right.
Like trying to do some of the old things that we've,
That might be more of a budgetary.
Is that what it is?
I think they were like, you don't get a blank check anymore now. So well, now with inflation, it's going to be $20 trillion to put someone up there. It's like, we've been there. We collected some rocks. I don't know. What are we going to do now?
Yeah. I don't know. But it's the idea that like, I guess what I'm thinking is like, we forget things.
Right.
We forget things that we've learned before, and we assume they're always going to be with us because there are areas or aspects of our culture that are technologically advancing. Like my great-grandfather said to my mother, someday somebody's going to sell bottles of water. Like he saw that, and my mom was like, what? Really? Why would anybody want to do that?
Right.
Then when I was in high school, I remember, everybody's got their phones, and that was the rise of text messaging.
Right.
Why wouldn't you just call them? That doesn't really make any sense to me,
Right.
And to see now where we are, and you were talking about that accelerated rate. Like, what are the technologies that you're talking about? Like the accelerated rate. What were you talking about there?
So in our lifetime, the acceleration of that, if you think about our generation and the previous generation, they had literally radio became a thing, television became a thing, black and white, then to color television. If you just think in like terms of just even like the communication technology and, the internet hits the scene and then just things rapid take off. There weren't just like one major milestone thing per generation. You mentioned cell phones and just how, not even just we were blown away from it, going from the idea of calling people on the phone to texting, and now you do literally everything with it, everything. And so it's just unbelievable. It navigates you places.
And that's relatively new technology.
To come pick you up. Right. And it just...
2010 was the iPhone?
It was, I think, a few years before that. The first iPhone, I can't remember what year it was, a few years before that.
Yeah,
I feel like I had friends that had them like in around like 5 or 6 or something like that for some reason. Because I remember when we got married, they didn't exist, but shortly thereafter, the first one came out.
They had the iPods, and then they went to the iPod Touch as well.
Right.
And I
The
don't
original
remember.
iPod with the wheel.
Yep, I still have one of those.
Oh, that's class. Save that. It'd be worth
Oh,
money.
dude, I put so many gigs of music on it, and now like that's the only place where it is. Like I don't even know
You
where all
can't
that
even-
music
yeah,
and
it's
you know
crazy.
old sermons and everything like that are still on that, so I still use it.
Right.
I just have to keep up with the chargers, make sure I have a
Right.
charger for it. But did you have a Palm Trio? Oh, that was big in the past.
I had a BlackBerry.
BlackBerry, there you go.
Yeah, and mine was a BlackBerry Storm. Worst piece of
Ooh, yeah.
technology ever made. It was the first
Well,
touchscreen.
they marketed it nice.
First touchscreen BlackBerry. I literally multiple times a day had to take the battery out because it would lock up, and that's the only way you could reboot it.
Oh, I remember that with my. I remember that
terrible.
I had the Trio in the center. I had the bigger one, and then I went down to the smaller one, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
It was awful.
Yeah, it really was. You had to take the battery out to reboot it. I remember that. Actually, I was going through storage. I found one of my old batteries there, and I'm like, oh, I remember having to take this thing out. I'm like,
I think
is
I
this
still
a-
have mine. I have a box somewhere. I'm pretty sure I saved most of my old tech.
Oh, yeah.
Should have brought that in.
Do you have a Kindle charger?
No, I never had a
Dude,
Kindle.
I need to find a Kindle charger. Yeah, because I found my Kindle the other day too.
Right.
I'm like, oh man, it would be nice
I'm
to
sure
have
Caleb
an e-reader.
Caleb can make us one.
He can make us one. Yeah,
probably.
Caleb can do anything.
Yeah, he can.
He can do
just
anything.
be like, oh, I welded one up. I'm like, okay, thanks.
There it is. Boom. Got it. It's awesome. Yeah. So the rise of technology over a short period of time.
Right.
How's that affecting culture right now?
In a lot of ways, it's you hear people say that we've never been more connected, which is true. We've never been more connected as a society ever. The opportunities for connection, I mean, they run deep. Like even in my own instance, I met Christy online, and that was like 2003. That was a pretty big deal back then. Now it's not a big deal. People meet online all the time.
Did you guys feel like were you nervous to tell people you met online? Because there was that stigma early on.
There was a little bit of a stigma for it, but I mean, I think we felt more hesitant than the people around us. Like, thankfully, our families were really supportive. But I think it was more of our situation, just our personalities and where we were in our life and everything. But yeah, it was. Looking back on it now, I don't think it was too much of a stigma. But yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to an older gentleman the other day who met his girlfriend online, and he's like, "I don't want to tell anybody about it." I'm like, "Well, why?" And he's like, "Well, it's online." I'm like, "But that's how it goes now."
Right. Well, I mean, everyone.
okay.
I mean, the rise of just, then it was like find your spouse. Now, literally, people just, we're swiping right. People are just like looking for a date or a hookup. I mean, it's like it really taking it to a whole new level. We're more connected than ever, but, on the other side of that, we're more isolated than ever. It's the true irony of, this rise of technology and how connected we have all the opportunities for connection in the world. And we have social media and every other app and device and everything that we can just be connected all the time, but it's surface. There's such a lack of deep relationship and connection. So it's kind of this, two sides of it. It's a great opportunity that we have so much more opportunity for connection, but it's shallow.
Right.
And so we find this, generation especially who comes up, they're digital natives. So this is just their language. It's not weird for them. They wouldn't be hesitant to tell someone I met someone online because it's just their normal.
Right.
But there's, that generation more so than ever is, they're very lonely. They're isolated because they have all the opportunity for connection, very much in the same way they'd have all the opportunity to, all the knowledge in the world is at their fingertips because we can Google anything, but then having the wisdom to know how to apply it, you can't Google wisdom. That's something that comes from life on life. And I think that's what we're seeing so much, that there's two sides of this. There's a great opportunity that we see all the blessings that come from technology, opportunity to connect and, reaching people like never before and connecting with others that we might not have had an opportunity to connect with, learning all these things. But then there's a disconnect because, with all the digital, we still live in a physical world and we're still relational beings and we still need to be in relationship with each other.
With the rise of social media, so has depression rates.
Right. Absolutely.
And, that's something that is very well known.
Right.
Specifically amongst, Meta and, all the groups that push that out there. I don't necessarily think they care about it so much. I think it's just like, okay, we'll just keep on doing what we're doing and profiting off of it.
Right.
Is that a concern for you?
I think so. I think it's and I think it's interesting too because yes, there is so much of that, but it's fascinating for me and even watching my children and their generation. They've kind of moved beyond social media for connection. Like they don't want to be on the platform their parents and grandparents are on anyway, you know, and so that's constantly shifting and changing. And what's interesting is as those platforms shift and change and grow, you know, if you think of a traditional Facebook, a Twitter, an Instagram, you know, and you have friends and friend requests and it's more social and you're sharing your experiences, where now it's just, it's become shortened to the point where, you know, a Snapchat or, you know, just going on and like all the things that all the progressive things that it became even like just a smaller slice. Like it's like I don't even share as much. It's just more of a highlight reel or something trying to get viral. It's like that opportunity for connection has even shrunk even more.
Yeah, right.
It's like, you know, we're not even like trying to share our life with people. They're just clips, they're snippets, it's just snapshots. It's things that, you know, it's not as you know, we're not even trying. The goal isn't even connection anymore.
Right.
It's just almost for the sake of, you know, having that out there.
Right. I was just watching. Well, last night I was reading through the news headlines, and I do the pour over. I don't know if you have ever
heard of it,
seen the pour over. It's just nice. I just get an
I'm
unbiased
French press
high
kind of
level.
guy,
Yeah, right. We should start one called the French press.
Bump.
Yeah, I wonder if they.
Dad joke.
You can't sue us because we're Christians. Anyways, we're all Christians here, but they give you like the high level of everything. And then I go through, you know, my Google News aggregator and I'm like, oh, you know, pick a couple things. And you have to be more careful because there's these, you know, titles that are oftentimes misleading, you know. So yesterday's dating this, I don't know when this is going to be released, but it was a quote from the Pope. You know, it was the Pope says that homosexuality
I didn't see this in the news.
You know, not a crime. But that wasn't like the full quote. So I had a meeting that night and with a gentleman, and he said, "Did you see what the Pope said?" He kind of wanted to help talk. Right. This is a really, really bright person. And I said, "Is that what he said? Like, you think they might not have given you the whole quote?" And he's like, "I don't know. I'll look it up." And he looks it up. I'm like, "Oh," he said, "it's not a crime, but it is a sin." You know?
Right.
And so people take those snippets now in the attention span and make it look like they want. How many times has that happened?
Right.
You know, in our world, even I haven't had too many experiences with that, thank God. But you know, like we've seen that. You know, this person said this, and like, no, you just cut it. You just cut it in half.
Right. And you see that with the rise of technology and as it's continued to roll out and the polarization of our world and all the things that were already happening, right? I mean, there's already going to be biases and all those things.
Yeah.
It's just, it's grown it so much because now everyone can jump in. Because how long, you know, the friend you referenced, how long would it have taken? Would they even have known that the Pope made a statement?
Right.
Hadn't that technology just made it and then people can shade it the way they want and then put it out there and it's this soundbite and like, look what they said. And now everyone's up in arms about all of it, you know, and that's the duality like we're talking about of it. It can be used in such great, powerful ways, but it's neutral. It's a tool. It's how we use it. You know, people use it for that, you know, Facebook and Meta, they know that it causes depression, but we're going to, you know, crank it out there and make money anyway. You know, the news is the same thing. We got to be in the polar extremes and swing the pendulum because that's what sells, right?
Yeah.
If we're just like giving them the facts, that's not sensational enough, right? And so it really is, there's this ability and it's, you know, and I think that's the great thing for us, you know, as a church, as we're exploring it. Obviously, we're not trying to like drive the wedge on the shadow side of all this technology. We see it as a great opportunity.
It's a great opportunity, yeah.
Right. It's a great opportunity because it doesn't have to all be negative. There are wonderful things that are happening out there because of technology. I mean, I think even my wife, you know, meeting each other, starting our family, that's a pretty positive thing. You know, that's a great thing. There's really good stuff.
I think it's a little bit of a positive thing.
Right. Yeah.
Like
I'm pretty sure it's a win. You know, or even marginalized people, or, you know, all the things that have happened, you know, that the advancement of technology and digitally, what that's done for so many people, let alone the furthering of the gospel and the kingdom, you know, and not even just where we're at digitally, you know, to take a look back at when, you know, radio and television became a thing and it was so expensive to do, but, you know, these ministries figuring out how to broadcast, you know, in other worlds and other countries. And you see now, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the explosion of faith in those areas because people were willing to, you know, really pioneer that, you know, like, hey, this technology's out there, you know, people got a radio, let's figure out how to get the gospel to them. And it's really cool. And I feel it's in a similar vein, you know, that the technology and the digital age is the same thing. How do we leverage that now? Because it's where people are, it's where they live, it's what they do. And, you know, it's neutral. So how can we use it for God's kingdom? It's there, it's available.
It's neutral.
Right. Let's not shy away from it and move past it or ignore it because it's you know, it's where people are.
Right. It's neutral. But like, how do we do that in a way that doesn't cause more isolation for them or excuse of not really being relationally connected? I think that's
Right.
The conundrum that we're in, the catch-22.
Right. And I think that's it. You know, that idea of not using digital media, not using a digital platform to continue to feed isolation, but to find ways to bring people together and connect them at a deeper level. I think it's your paradigm, it's your view on, is it just simply, you know, as we've talked about here, you know, at Hill City, is it more of just, is it just view count? You know, we're just trying to see that ticker go up and see more people interact and view a video, you know, or is it how then do we take that interaction and see people connected in a deeper level? And I think that's it. Right. I think it's leveraging it as an opportunity, you know, or we've talked about, we've had this conversation before, we've mentioned this, that, you know, people, when they would, you know, check out your church, they would come, right? And they would come visit it and see what it was about. And it's like the lobby, right? And the lobby has changed. The lobby is completely digital because no one is coming to your church before they totally, fully vet you online. And everyone does this now. It doesn't even matter what generation. They're on there. They, you know, how many times have I heard, you know, we want to listen to some of the messages, or they want to go see like the staff page, or, you know, whatever.
Find the beliefs as
right, or whatever it is. You know, they just want to get a sense and feel of who you are. People, and it's not unique to church. People just don't want to show up. I mean, just even look at the things that are online, you know, Yelp reviews and everything that you can get online for like restaurants and Google and all the ratings. Like, no one is just showing up to anything, you know, without fully vetting it online anymore. And the same thing is true in the church world, you know, that people are going to use that to find out who you are. So if, you know, we circle back around to that question, if we can find ways to continually improve that, to reach people, to connect people where they are, that's not the end result. It's just to, you know, in the same way, our goal wouldn't just be to boost physical attendance. We're not trying to fill up the seats at Carlinton. It's not like that's the result. Yay, we won because we have a lot of people here. You know, the goal is then to see interaction, relationship, discipleship, deeper connection happen, and we just want to leverage the digital platform in the same way. Yeah.
And you know, I think the dangers of this too extend into what's happening regarding censorship in their nation. Right. You know, platforms closing down to anybody who has an opposing view of, you know, whatever it is, you know, like, you know, we have to navigate that. There's a danger of that. There's also the danger, I think, of, you know, the celebrity pastor, right. You know, what you were saying about the number of counts. It's just such an unhealthy way to look at things. Like, so many people, this many people heard my message, like, for 5 seconds. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And then you get your validation off that. Like, that's how dangerous is that? Like,
and I think that's just purely a carryover of where the scorecard has been in churches anyway, because the scorecard has really just been the butts and bucks, right? You know, it's how big your church is, how many people are attending, and that's kind of the validation, and that's how we view people. Oh, they're really doing something for the kingdom of God. Like, look how big it is. And, you know, you could do it could be very easy and very tempting, honestly, to do the same thing digitally and say, look, you know, look how many people are on the live stream. Look how many people are coming and viewing this after. How many people are sharing. And if you're just simply, you know, in it for the numbers, you know, that's just, you know, for us and the conversations we've had, you know, that scorecard has just changed so much. And, you know, if you're just aiming for the numbers, then, you know, it seems kind of silly, honestly. Yeah. There's just not a lot of fruit there.
Can people really get a good view of who you are online? Like a realistic view of who you are? Like, I'm thinking about, you know, let me look up some clips from somebody, and it's all highly edited and it's all perfect. And
I would say, honestly, you asked me that question, it'd be the same thing. Say, take the digital out of it. Could someone truly get an idea of you, who you were, by just showing up and hearing you speak and seeing you on stage? No. There's no way. You can't, because there's always going to be the presentation of, right? I mean, and you never could truly, and honestly, it's not even the goal anymore. The goal is to, you know, point people to relationship and connection anyway. And so, yeah, I don't think people can just hear a soundbite, but that's just the world we live in, right? It's so hard because, like, as upset as we get about politicians or celebrities and all the people, is like, man, we don't know anything about these people. You know, all we know is like the Pope example, you know, like, what did these people truly say? Like, you know, how is this being spun, or how is it being, what light are they being cast in, or whatever? He's like, we have no idea who these people, what's in their heart anyway. You know?
I was talking to Mike about that. And Mike was mentioning how in Peru, whenever they work with kids in the home that they built, the kids would say, "So you know Hannah Montana, right?" Because she's digitally known. Right. She's from the United States, and they think personally, right?
But Mike probably does know Hannah Montana.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. It's like it's so interesting.
I got the best of both worlds. Sorry,
get it, dude. Get it. I didn't know you knew that. See, my kids, were never.
My niece was the right age for that when that came out. So
what year was that?
Montana. I don't remember, but I just remember that theme song playing on repeat.
I remember thinking back then, this is not going to turn out good.
Right.
I just remember thinking that.
And
that's all I'll say.
Right. Sorry, man.
This is not going to turn out good.
So anyway,
it was around the same time digitally, though. Britney Spears broke up with her boyfriend over a text message, and we were appalled. We were like, "What? That's so crazy!"
Right.
Yeah. And now, that's the world we live in.
Right.
Well,
no one wants to call anymore now.
Right.
Like I had, a couple years ago, called a friend of mine, and he'd text back, "Can't answer. Is everything okay? Why are you calling?" I was like, "I was just calling to say hey." It's like, "Oh, okay."
You're calling me. This must be really bad.
Calling. It must be. Yeah. You didn't text first, because no one wants to call. Everyone's just, you just text.
Wow. Funny. Yeah, dude, it's crazy. You think about it from a just an adjustment standpoint from an older generation. I remember we had the conversation a long time ago about, hey, we're not in a church with, pews and stained glass windows. And I think about the changes that the prior generation made in order to reach me where I was. And I was so thankful for that.
Right.
Right.
Big shift, big change.
Okay. So if you're talking to somebody of the older generation right now, and they're having a hard time with understanding digital technology, what are we doing? Going to church online is actually like being a part of church.
Right.
I hate the term going to church, by the way.
Right.
We are the church. We exist for the world.
Right.
But just speaking the vernacular, what do you say to that person? How would you? What do we do about that?
Right. Well, I think you teed it up. It's a beautiful analogy. It's in the same way that things, progressively change. And I think, 20, 30 years ago, you began to see that preference or the, recognizing of, man, we're missing it on reaching the next generation. And almost seeing how churches started doing 2 services on Sunday. There was the traditional and the contemporary, because they began to realize wow, we're in love with we absolutely love this style of worship and the teaching, and this just does it for us, but we're recognizing we're missing it with the next generation. So how can we begin to shift? And you begin to see that, right? And it was we had traditional services, then we had the contemporary service, and eventually things, you don't see that as much anymore. It shifted mostly to the contemporary side of things, and people were willing to shift and change. And even going further back, in the idea of, like you said, stained glasses and pews, and just just a very, what we would consider now traditional aesthetic. That wasn't traditional at one point. That was cutting edge. The fact that someone thought about communicating truths of the gospel and the Bible through stained glass because of illiteracy was such a thing, and it was a way that they could simply communicate those things and put them up in front of people. That was groundbreaking in its time. But then as things shift and change and people recognize what it took to reach your generation will not be what it takes to reach the next generation.
Yes.
And that's just true. And we can see that up close, in our kids' lives, but just even generationally. And as that we become further and further removed from that next generation, as that age begins to separate further and further, it's so easy just to be comfortable or recognize, what was it in my life that did it? Shouldn't it be the same for them? And it's not.
Yeah.
And so being willing to change and lay down preferences. I remember years ago hearing a senior pastor is a very, you would consider it a hip church, hip trendy, hip worship, the whole thing, production and everything. And it was just wow, they just really do a great job of reaching the next generation. And he was just you think this is my preference? He's I can't stand any of this. It's these are not the songs I would pick. This is not the style I would pick. I just recognize we really are all in on this next gen thing, And so I think, that's what I would say, that if it's preferences, that's hard, but we have to lay them down because the method is going to change. The message never is. And I think if we as older generations, and even, us now, if we can get our heads around that being the message truly is Jesus, the message truly is the gospel. And if we're just laying down preferences on how we present that to people, at the end of the day, if it's a kingdom win, that's where we want to be.
Right.
Not easy. It definitely isn't laying down preferences. I think there's been plenty of pastors who have been fired fired for moving the organ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or
Right,
mixing
right.
the choir. No, seriously. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
having some conversations with people. It's like, gloves are off. Like there's,
Right.
you want to what? We can't get rid of the organ. We have to have the choir. All the things that are just, cultural preferences.
Right, right.
But we
How
just
did
it's
Jesus
so
put it
ingrained.
when he addressed that with the Pharisees? He said that your religion or like your tradition is making God's power null and void.
Right.
Like, whoa, that's big.
Right.
Like, wait. So you're saying that I'm not able to change or make a change, therefore the power of God is actually limited?
Right.
Whoa, that's
Right.
major. Like, and then regarding, preference.
Right.
My pastor used to say Jesus didn't die at the altar of preference. He was
Right.
one who nixed the choir, and
Right.
I don't know, the good, bad, and the ugly. Maybe he can tell the story. I think there were some things about that he'd be like, yeah, I probably went a little extreme on that. We
Right.
always do. I think
Right.
you know the right thing to do. You do it right away. You don't think everything through. But he made that change. He made that shift to reach the next generation. That church is still going strong and reaching the next generation, while many who buckled down have closed up over the last couple of years.
Right.
And then
Right.
we see hindsight's always 2020. I was grateful that he
Right.
made those shifts, but
Right.
preferentially, I'll say it right. Jesus, it wasn't his preference, obviously, to
Right.
go to the cross. I was
Right.
reading, I think it was Clement of Rome. It wasn't his preference to be burned at the stake,
Right.
And he was like,
He's like, yay.
Right.
Can't wait.
everybody said they're coming after you.
Right.
And he had a vision that he was to be martyred.
Right. I would have been like, get behind me, Satan.
Right.
The enemy's tormenting me with this vision.
Right. And so you see like this, like preference is not New Testament Christianity.
Right.
It's I even remember the one scripture that's popping up in my heart. I wish I could reference it very quickly. Get behind me, Satan. And he said, for you're not concerned of the things of God,
Right.
but the things of man, I think
Right.
it was. I wish I could pull that out a little bit.
Right. When they were telling Jesus, like, that's not going to happen to you. Like,
Yeah.
that's not God's plan. You're supposed to come in here and be the Messiah and save us all. And
He said, you're not concerned about God's interests, but your own.
Right. Which, side note, it's always a good day when Jesus calls you Satan and it's in
Right.
the Bible.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, right?
you'd be depressed for a little bit.
But there's also hope in that too,
Right.
Hey,
Jesus, just
like,
call
oh
me
man,
Satan.
I have messed up so many times.
Right.
And he just continues to call me back to him and,
Yeah, it's not like he kicked him to the curb. Right.
Right.
There's grace. There's encouragement. Yeah. Jesus
Yeah.
called him Satan, still had him around. So
Yep.
that's good.
But preference is
Right.
big,
It really is. Yeah, it's tough, because it is. And I'm finding that even, in my 40s now, I would like to think that, I'm staying hip and trendy and all that kind of stuff, but just even finding in my own preferences and the things that I experienced that, in my teens and 20s, which would have been, grateful to be a part of a church that, went out of their way to lay their preferences down to reach us. And so for me, I had that and then thinking that should be the same thing that applies today,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
not, it's changing.
Yeah.
And so just being willing to, because there's something, and I don't even think it's necessarily always an evil thing where people are, preferences. It may just even be comforting, right? It may just be this is how I've connected with God, or this is my pathway,
Right,
or,
right.
that it's not even like people are trying to be like, this is the way we're going to do it because everything else is wrong. It's just, preferences. We can find so much comfort and safety in those because it's just what we know. There's familiarity,
Yeah.
to it. And can it turn ugly where
It's
people hold
natural.
on to it? Right.
It's not
It's
It's
natural.
not bad to have a preference,
No,
but it's
no.
biblical to lay your preference down
Right.
for the benefit of,
Right.
of another.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
What,
Totally.
what did you just say? You said something that was so good, and I just
I don't know.
steamrolled it.
We'll have to rewind it and watch it. I don't know.
And rewind it in real life. Yeah. Is there a danger of technology going too far right now? Been reading articles about artificial intelligence, and you had the Google guy say this is sentient. It went sentient.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
Google's like, yeah, no, it didn't.
Yeah, right,
And
right.
everybody's arguing that, but.
But then was it Google that said it, or was it the sentient AI that actually put it in there and said, no, it's not, said the AI?
That's funny.
It's like, everyone back to work. I'm not sentient.
Yeah. Okay.
And I saw that.
I saw that. I've seen everything. Is there a danger in this going too far, not only in the world, but within the church?
Well, yeah, that's a lot. So yes, and I think when things are being pioneered and there's unknown, anytime there's unknown, there's uncertainty. And I think the same way that people are like, in any technology advances, the unknown creates concern. Vehicles, when the vehicles came to rise, there are people like, everyone's going to die. Cars are going to kill everybody, right? We can't have cars. We need to stick with the horse. It's known, it's trusted,
Right.
So I think in the same way, anytime there's new technology and there's advancement, there will always be a level of uncertainty, and that uncertainty can breed fear. And so there is that, idea of it. And obviously you can run that all the way to the umpteenth degree, because that's not a new thought. That's the whole movie series Terminator, right? That technology and AI got to the point where it took over the world and blew everyone up. Matrix, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? That's been a thought in human minds that technology is going to take us over. Is that prophetic or just fun Hollywood, banter?
It's been interesting to see how certain science fiction has come true.
Right. So, I think there's
Back to the Future
part
missed it.
Oh, they missed it
quite a bit.
Yeah.
And actually, I like that Toyota truck that he had.
Right. I mean, The Simpsons get it closer. They predict the future quite a bit more.
I've seen some clips on that. Yeah. It is so fascinating how they predicted so much.
Right. And maybe they just have a prophetic writer. Maybe is it Matt Groening, or whatever, the producer? Maybe he's just got a prophetic gift he doesn't know about.
Maybe he is. Or you just produce so many episodes, you're bound to get one right
here.
So
much out there, right? You just make so many. It's like Nostradamus. You make so many predictions. It's like, look how accurate it is. Yeah, but there's like 50,000 things that were so wrong. But the one is right.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So I think that you can. There could be fear around it, but I think in the same way that some of those fears will be quelched. Then we see that it's not trying to take us over and rule our lives and become this digital overlord. So yes, things can go too far, but I think there'll be those checks and balances, and things will continue to progress. And I think the same thing in the church world. Yeah, you could go too far with it, but I think at the same time, it's not about this idea of just, as we've talked, not to throw a whole nother concept in it, this idea of the old wine and the new wine, and the way of doing things and the way we're going to do things. I think there's always going to be this sense of, as God leads and new technologies and new opportunities come, forward, there could be a danger that you totally abandon everything and say, this is it and this is the only way, which I don't believe that's what we're trying to do here. So I think there's less of a danger of using technology, if at the end of the day, the end result is truly the Great Commission and to see people reached and discipled and God's kingdom furthered. I think it's less of a danger when you keep that in mind. More so than some of the other things that we talked about, if the, whatever that end result is. So I think it's less of a danger, maybe in the same way, think of it this way, when the printing press came out and people were probably like, that's just way too dangerous. People don't need to have their own copy of the Bible.
They still believe that.
Right. The laity shouldn't have it. That should just be guarded, and the priesthood should only have that and read it. There's just too much danger that can happen from that. It's the same way anytime a technology advances, there's, could there be that potential danger? I mean, I guess so. But for me, I don't see it as much of a danger as much as it is an opportunity.
Yeah. But maybe AI writing your sermons for you and writing worship music.
Right.
Like that's real.
Oh, right. I mean, didn't they just, the headline, someone just passed the bar exam, they had AI.
Yeah.
Passed the bar exam for them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's absolutely insane.
Right.
So it's not just in the church world that it can potentially go too far. It's everywhere.
Right.
But we're in the same sense. Like, I get this when I go into cities. Like every time I drive into the city of Pittsburgh, I look around and like they built most of these buildings without one computer.
Right.
That is so fascinating.
Well, they definitely designed the highways and tunnel without a computer because we're sitting there for 9 hours.
Yes, maybe AI could have. Yeah.
That's what we could ask AI, how to fix the traffic in the tunnel.
There it is. Boom. We're done. We got it. We got it.
Perfect. PennDOT. We're going to send them the link.
But we've stopped thinking about that. Could somebody really build a skyscraper like that right now without a computer?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure, but
Right. Think of it in the same way, like how much better were people doing math in their head before a calculator, right? People were just much, you're sharper, or directions without GPS. How much more people were
I've turned off the
aware.
GPS recently.
Right.
Because I found myself getting so dependent on technology, I don't even know how to get somewhere. So I'm like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And Lauren gets a little bit upset sometimes because I'll drive into traffic because I'm like, no, I know where I'm going.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, you didn't check the GPS. I'm like, yeah, that would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Now we're half hour late because there was an accident and we didn't get around it.
Yeah.
So there's benefits of it, you know, but we don't want to become overly dependent on it. That's the, you know, that's it. So how do you actually build a healthy culture of that? Like, what are you looking to do within our church and, you know, where we're heading? How do you build a healthy culture of embracing technology to reach people where they are, but like, you know, still build community? What do you do?
I think you do it with humility, and I think you do it with the Spirit's lead. Like anything, you know, any tool, any opportunity, you know, same way we'd ask ourselves the same question, thinking of the current model, how do we build a building, you know, and do that the right way and not let that go too far, how, you know, or doing it smart, doing it with wisdom, doing it with the Spirit's leading. And I think it's the same exact thing with digital. It's just a tool. Yeah. You know, a building's a tool, a service format's a tool. These are all opportunities and things that we have at our disposal, and to reach people, to further God's kingdom, see people discipled, reached for Christ. And I think it's the same way that we would do that here at Hill City. That's our goal. You know, it's done through prayer. It's done through the Spirit's leading. It's done through this idea of seeking God and, you know, doing it to the best of our ability. And like we've said, just driving that point home that the end result is, you know, not just another click, just not another meter ticking up, but it's learning and discovering how to then see people further connected for deeper relationship. You know, the goal is not to, you know, I think sometimes the thought is, oh, you know, doing things digitally or people being online, now it's just another opportunity for people to hide and disengage and be like, I attend church, you know, just watch online. It's like another step of removal. And that's not our goal. Our goal is not to create a platform for people to hide behind and not grow or further their connection. It's how then do we make that step to deeper connection in the same way that someone attending and showing up in person and never moving beyond anything other than just hearing a message, you know, that's not the end result. It's just now the playing field has changed. People can either show up in person and just engage, or we online and just engage. And if they don't make the next step, that's not the win. Yeah. But it's easy to see that it's easy to think, you know, that, hey, if they're coming in person, that's a bigger win than if they're just being online. When honestly, those are both, you know, the same level of opportunity to get people involved and connected to the next level, you know, in their journey and their path, which is relationship.
Essentially, it's up to the individual. I went to a church. It was like one of the mega churches in the United States, like one of the largest. And honestly, we were kind of in the area, and I was with a couple of guys. I was like, I could, you know, hit or miss. You know, I could go there, could not. You know, good. Not putting that down or being opinionated. It's just that, you know,
you hated it.
You get it.
No,
you know, like. We've been in the church world a long time.
Yeah, it takes a lot to impress us.
It does. Yeah. It does. It's like,
oh,
okay,
that's nice.
Yeah, good. You know, that's good. Like, yeah, I'm just, yeah. It takes a lot to impress us.
Yeah.
So we go in the first time guest line because we were actual guests there.
Did you have to put your flashing lights on? Like what you do, and you pull in and like, put your hazards on so we know you're a guest. They had
that option. We chose not to, and then we just got in the line. You know,
we did that. We showed up. We did not put our hazards on, and somehow someone still showed up in our car, came over, and they're like, "Oh, it's your first time." We're like, "How?"
How in the world did you know that?
I was like, is that a spiritual gift? Like their parking lot people were like just, you know, sensing first time. I don't know.
No, they have state trooper.
We were like, we were trying to hide.
They had it in their
plate
database.
readers. Plate readers.
Yeah. Plate readers.
I wouldn't be. And it just pops up on their phone.
Yep.
First time in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. It's genius, Zach. Let's do this.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll know.
Write that down, Caleb.
Figure it out. Yeah, right.
You can't hide from us.
We were in the first time guest line, and there was a woman there, and we said, "Oh, it's your first time here too?" She's like, "No, I've been coming here for years." She's like, "I just come to the guest line every time."
It's brilliant.
She's like, "I get better seats." She didn't know anybody there. She didn't know anybody at that church.
Right.
She'd been there for 7 years, I think it was, and she just maybe she went once or twice a month, and she went to the guest line, and they didn't know.
Right.
You know, they had no clue.
So big, right?
Yeah. They didn't know. She didn't care.
Right.
She just wanted a better seat and
Right.
didn't really even want to know anybody.
VIP
It was
treatment.
her choice. And I suppose like, you know, in the rise of technology,
Right.
it's really just empowering people to choose still,
Right.
you know?
And us doing the best we can to make a compelling, you know, reach to get people involved in that next step.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, seriously, you just seriously boil it down to Jesus saying, "Follow me and I'll teach you to be fishers of men." It's that whole idea that he's teaching us to fish and reach people where they're at and to fish for people like physically, you know, just even seeing them out there, the disciples, you got to be where the fish are. It's not like they were standing in the middle of the dry land and he's like, "I'm going to teach you to fish for men," and then just like come sailing out of the lake, you know, for a couple miles and into a net. That's ridiculous. And so it's the same thing. Digital just allows us to
Yeah.
be where people are at.
Yeah.
The fish are out here. Look, the fish are in this digital pool. So let's just teach you how to reach them digitally. And that's fishing for men, just where they're at. You
Yeah.
go where the fish are, and the fish are the fish are online.
It's really true though.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're going to reach people, it really is online.
Right.
I think the last couple of years really taught us that too.
Right.
You know, I had a wrong assumption that being in living rooms would help us to reach more people because you have your neighbors and there's relationship and all of that stuff. It worked for some, it didn't. You know, I didn't realize that that concept, although it could be evangelistic, it needs to actually be purposefully aimed to be evangelistic
Right.
in order to be evangelistic.
Right.
You know, that's a
Not as much organic as much as is intentional.
yeah.
Right.
Better way to put it. That's good. And you know, the idea we've seen it, like church numbers in the United States have been on the decline since 2012 majorly.
Right.
You know, to the point where
Significantly. Yep.
I think it's 2070 there will be less Christians in the United States, or less people who profess to be Christians in the United States than people
Right.
who, you know, than the opposite. So, I mean, it's just been abysmal for the most part. What I've
Right.
noticed is most church growth is not actual church growth.
Transfer.
It's transfer growth.
Right.
Yeah. And to the point where I'm like, okay,
We celebrate it like it's growth, but it's transfer growth.
because it's a validation for us.
Right.
See,
The scorecard.
God's hand is here.
Right, right.
You know, and it's like, no, it's like you have a bunch of bitter people coming. And I don't mean to be cynical, but
Right.
you and I have gone through it. We've actually seen it being church planners.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, when somebody comes in and bashes another pastor in the area,
Right.
you told me this, let's say that's my friend.
Right.
You know, and then they stop.
Right. Or you just
But-
be like, "Oh, I love them. So they're so great." You know, just like you just shut it down with a compliment and people know you're like, you just can't bring that mess here. I'm not gonna
Right.
participate in that.
Exactly. And that's wise. It's very wise. You know, it's very wise. But when we start the church, we see that transfer growth. You know, now where we are, we've got a lot of really amazing people
Absolutely.
who are a part of this, who are called to this. And it is so cool. How do we continue then to build the culture that we have in place online? Like when somebody is, like you're saying, you know, digital is where people are. Mm-hmm. So now do we invite people to come to the church digitally instead of in person? Is it both and, either or? Like,
I think it's both and either or. Like think
Yeah.
of like it's almost made the ramp even more obtainable, you know, in the same way like doing an anywhere group might lower the pressure because someone feels much more comfortable coming to someone's home than they do. And we see that, right? We've seen there are some people
Yeah.
who only attend when it's in the home. They will very rarely, if ever, come when we meet together and gather at the school.
Yeah.
And you know, and the goal is that relationship is still being formed and happening there, and we've seen that happen. I think it's the same thing. You know, the opportunity to be able to invite someone to something locally, and they have. It only can be better if there's more opportunity. You know, if it's in person in someone's home, or you know, meeting, you know, at Starbucks, or if it's, you know, coming in person, you know, to the large group gathering, or if it's even just being like, hey, you can attend online and check out and see what we're about. Because I think of the opportunity that the Holy Spirit has then, because if it's truly the Holy Spirit operating and moving in people's lives, you know, that all those different mediums have the opportunity that when we're gathering and the Spirit's moving, the Spirit isn't limited to just being in person. It's not
Right.
like it just be like, oh, well, you know, the Holy Spirit can only work and convict and work in someone's life if they're there in person in the room. We know that to not be true. I mean, the Holy Spirit is not limited by a physical location.
Right.
You know, so if that's happening, then yeah, it's a great opportunity to be able to invite someone and kind of lower that bar, and maybe just, you know, break some of the stigmas for them.
Is
maybe
there a
see something that they
biblical-
want to be a part of?
is
or
there a
whatever.
biblical argument for that?
that the
Can
whole
you think of any stories in the Bible? Like, I know that we know that to be true because we know God's omniscient. He's
right.
omnipresent, Are there biblical examples of that? And I know that over the last couple of just decades, we've seen, televangelism is interesting, in a lot of ways.
But I mean, people have there is no doubt. I mean, as easy as it's to be super skeptical about that, there is no doubt that people have received physical healing through television ministries. There's no doubt. I mean, it's just the data is there. I mean, it's for skeptics like me. It's easy to be like, there's no way that stuff's weird. But there's no doubt. I know someone. I actually had a family member who was healed through watching some on TV, and we were like, they went to the doctor and everything because we're all like, no, that's just a coincidence. And the doctor's like, I don't know what to tell you. It was this, and now it's not.
Yeah.
So it was the only thing was they knew that they prayed that evening and it was healed. So I mean, I think
you have the centurion,
right?
Where
he sends him. Right, and it was, isn't that interesting in that story because it was like, Jesus, you need to be here, and it was all this pressure, and all this like you've got to be here to do this, and then I think that was even out of the right heart and the right spirit, but it just even the fact that he, how about the prayer hankies? You know what I mean? The apostles,
I was thinking
the same thing, right?
Yeah.
That they weren't there, and the spirit still moved. There was that point, and it's less about there being a piece of cloth physically as much as it was just a point of contact for their faith, right?
Yes.
So I think the same thing's true. Couldn't we say that, and we're really starting to get out here, but couldn't we say the same thing then, biblically seeing these stories that it wasn't a physical representation of them being there, but there was a point of faith happening and that's still the Spirit moving.
Yeah.
That he's not limited by, physically being there
reaching
in
people
person.
Where they are.
Right.
Spiritually, physically, emotionally.
Right. And we wouldn't have seen the effect that some of these emerging technologies that we referenced earlier with radio and television that had such a profound impact in those nations in those early days to really start stirring, faith or building Christianity and seeing people's lives changed if that wasn't the case. It'd just be like they heard a message or they saw someone on TV, but that it began transforming their lives and their hearts.
Right.
So I think, there's a lot of evidence for that biblically and just historically that we see, that's very possible.
Yeah.
That the Spirit of God is not limited to operating in just a physical. It's kind of the whole idea of even church history, where it's just constantly trying to put God back into this religious form of like, you've got to be in this. It's like, is God's presence only available in a building? Is it just the tabernacle? Or was when Jesus died and the veil was torn in two and he made it available and the Spirit dwelling inside of us? It's like, well, or wherever two or three are gathered in his name, there I am. This whole idea that it's not just simply a physical location, but that God's Spirit works well beyond the physical.
Where in church history did we become convinced? I'm trying to think through all that we've read, and I know you've read, when I say we, I know you've read the same. Where did we become convinced that church was a location?
I think really in church history where it really started to take off in the Roman Empire when Constantine made it the state religion, and then they began to really institutionalize it. And then there was this real desire as they began to put people in authority, bishops, et cetera, where there was like this felt need to protect this movement and protect the gospel and Christianity in more of an authoritarian way. And so it became more of a, privileged access thing, that people didn't have access to. You had to go through, a minister, a priest, a bishop, or whatever.
Yeah.
There was this sense as it became institutionalized and move away from a grassroots movement to more of a, structured. I think there was this idea, and even we can really dive deep into that and that whole understanding of the interpretation of church and what that meant, and it was, is church a physical space or is church an actual body of people, and how scriptures were interpreted and even as they were translated into different languages. I think that it's interesting because I think in the book we're reading right now as a staff, it talks about like if you were to even look up like church in Wikipedia, it's a picture of a building, right? It's not a picture of a group of people.
No, and that was a political term in that day. Ecclesia was a political term. It was a people who were gathered for a purpose. Right.
So what is so I think that's it. It's that shifted and just became that just became more and more and more and more of a thing that And then you could just take down history line and where that went, and that just continued.
It kind of robs people, that mindset robs people of their part in the Great Commission.
Right.
And they expect it to be on you and me only.
Right.
Well, I'm going to do my part by inviting somebody to church, and Zach, Brian, they're going to share the gospel.
Right. Like it's someone else, like it's a full-time clergy or pastor's job to then pray, seek God, get in the word, and then present that to us, when we as Christ followers are fully capable of doing that ourselves and called and should be.
We should be.
Praying and in scripture and applying that in our own life. And then not only that, then taking it to the point where we're investing into other people, discipling. Yeah.
Spiritual dependence.
Right. Right.
With a T.
Right.
Not that great of a thing.
No.
Not biblical.
No, I don't think it was God's goal to make people completely solely dependent on someone else spiritually.
Right. Like the idea that somebody has more access to God than...
Right. And that's the appearance, right, is that someone's got this secret knowledge or ability, or we put people on a platform. And we as pastors know this, that we are just as flawed as anybody. Like, don't put me on a pedestal. And they're like, no, you've really got this figured out. And it's like, no, you can seek God, you can hear him, or you've got gifts and abilities, just as much.
And pastors knew that and for years guarded it.
Right.
I'm not going to be amongst the people because then they're going to, they're going to see it.
Right. The sense of keeping the facade up that we're not flawed. Right.
Right. But I wouldn't blame them for that.
Right.
Because, we
still feel that tension today. Let's just be honest.
Yes.
I mean, it's become a little more acceptance, that we can talk about issues and struggles and messages and be vulnerable and transparent. And, some people are better than that and others are more natural than it. But, years ago, I can't even imagine, someone getting up there and here's my struggle. People are like, what?
What? Yeah. Because you have to be perfect. You have to have it all together. That's just not the gospel at all. It's not the gospel.
Right.
We just see the forgiveness, the goodness of God throughout.
That's the whole beauty of the grace and the gospel, is that God is working with imperfect, blemished, broken people, and that is all of us. And that's the beauty of it, that he still chooses relationship and he still works through us, and know that we're still working on becoming more like Christ, that it's a lifelong pursuit and endeavor, and we don't arrive.
Right. Yeah. And so everybody can be used, the priesthood of all believers.
Right.
We're a priesthood. We're a royal priesthood.
Right.
All of us.
Absolutely.
We all have a part in sharing the gospel. And I guess that's what excites me about what is coming next in the church altogether, the Big C church. I think people are starting to realize that. Like, I have a part to play. I've been sitting on the sidelines for a really long time. I have gifts inside of me that God wants to use outside of these walls. When the walls were taken away and we couldn't meet, and us specifically, because we both planted churches in schools that we rented off of, and
they're like, we're closed, sorry.
We're closed. There's nowhere for us to go.
Yeah.
And then you still get the angry people who are like, you should have still met. Like, what do you want me to do? Break? Right. When I was a kid, I broke into a school and found out it was a federal offense pretty quick.
Yeah, we're going to break in the school and keep meeting.
Like,
forget what they said. Yeah. Bring your hammer at 10 a.m.
I do know a pastor who did that in the 70s.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He got locked out, but he had an extra key. He opened it up and he kept on going.
Just a key, he didn't smash a door in.
But they told him he wasn't welcome back, and he said, I'm still coming,
Wow, legit.
Yeah, but I mean, he could have been arrested for that, Anyways. Well, we realized when the walls were removed, I think you and I had that in our heart to begin with. I think the burdens that you and I have talked about for a really long time, like about starting a church and what it should look like, and mobilizing people and bringing out the gifts in them. Our hearts have always been united on that. I think that most people began to realize then, when the walls were taken away, that church is so much more than just a gathering.
Right. Right.
Just,
and the beauty of it, like you said, there are people who've been sitting on the sidelines, may have been in the faith for a long time, ready to be used. And that's exciting. And also exciting, reaching new people who don't know that they were supposed to be sitting on the sidelines, and then seeing their excitement and being activated in their faith, and then just going and doing that work and being commissioned. That's really exciting to shift that paradigm for the people who have been on the sides and the people who have yet to join, who don't know that this, now you have this probationary period. Now, man, like, you're in this relationship with Jesus, you're seeking to follow him. Now you go. Like, you don't have this, like, sit on the side and wait to get involved and, God use you and build your, those gifts in you. It's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I talked with a friend of mine who's a part of the Church Underground movement, and he introduced me to this concept of duckling discipleship.
Right.
And he said to me, Zach, like, just if you're one one step closer, you can lead somebody one step further behind you,
right,
closer to the heart of Jesus.
Right. You can lead people where you've been, right? And
right.
even if that step's just like sharing your story and look what Christ has done in my life. You can share that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can lead someone in that.
Yep. Yep. It's true. It's true. The danger, I think, is when we put all of the expectation on new believers to do everything. And we've seen that as well throughout the years of serving in churches. Right. You're here, you're going to go through these 4 classes, and now you're spiritually developed and you're ready to go. Come on, you're commissioned. Right. Now it's teach like, this class.
Excuse me? Yeah. Right.
Like, oh my.
Yeah.
And I'd always rather err on the side of aggression than keeping people immobilized, you know, but in the same sense, like, that we have to continually strike that balance. So regarding discipleship, can somebody be discipled online?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess it would really come down to what that looked like. I think discipleship really happens, through that understanding of application and seeing it lived out. So I would say the answer is yes and no. And that might seem like a cop-out, but I think that there are elements of that could take place in a digital format, but I think there always is going to have to be some level of life on life.
Yeah, relational component.
I mean, unless I'm missing it, I don't think true discipleship can be devoid of life on life.
Right. The opportunity that we have is putting content out there for people to discuss and getting the content to a place where people can actually watch it, ascertain what they're watching, and then have the discussion points afterwards, but you still have somebody walking with them.
Right.
Right.
I think people can connect. I think there can be content. Those things can all happen digitally, but I think, there's going to always need to be that element of life on life, people connecting, that's going to have to be there. Right. We're relational beings.
Yes.
It's not good for me to be
alone.
Exactly.
It's not going to be what?
No, I was going to say it's just not going to happen devoid of, relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And that term disciple was really like a student, and you have to be a student. Who are you a student of? And whose dust are you picking up as you walk behind them?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And so watching online is, you can get the content, but that's the danger, isn't it? Like, oh yeah, I know that. I heard this message before. Are you living it?
Right. The application.
Right. Just like you said. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Information plus application equals transformation.
Right.
James said to not be hearers of the word, but be doers of the word.
Yeah. Big difference.
It is.
Right. And the current format has set us up to just be hearers, right? They're just the teaching centric, and just the idea of just coming and hearing and being a part of a service where we worship and hear a message, but then that piece has been missing for so long. Like, now how do I actually take this and apply this and do this?
Right. Yeah. Did you know that the book of James, people throughout church history age didn't want the book of James to be canonized because, it's like grace alone saves you. And then he's like, hey, you show me your faith. Show me your faith. I'll show you my works.
Right.
And like, wait, no, your works actually validate your faith. Right. Like, if you really believe this, you're going to do it.
Right. There's going to be some fruit.
I'm so glad that James is canonized. Like, it's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
And then also the focus on suffering. People don't like that.
No.
The testing of your faith develops perseverance.
Right.
Let steadfastness have its perfect work. So you can be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. You're like, wait a second. That means I got to go through problems? Like, no. Right. It should be all good. And that's, I think, sometimes that's a disconnect that we have. It's I'm going to consume the content that I want to consume and focus on the things that I want to focus on. And that's why we do need somebody relationally in our life saying, 100%. No, there's more to it than this.
Yeah.
There's more to it than just what you want to read about.
Right.
Like, how many times when you're a youth pastor and you try to get your kids to read the Bible, they're like, I'm going to start in the book of Revelation.
No. We're always like, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's where you're starting. Mm-hmm. Just do that. Read about Jesus.
Yep. Yeah. Gospel of John, camp out in the epistles.
Right.
What are the epistles? Oh,
yeah.
What's that mean?
Right. What's the synoptic gospel?
Yeah. Let's teach them the depths of it. Come on, you're 12. You can get it.
Right.
Yeah. Digitally, what are you excited about, though, in the coming months?
I think I'm excited just to continue to learn and the opportunity to see it as a tool, in the same way that, we as a young church are excited about the opportunity. We have land and we want to put up a building because we see that as an opportunity to use it as a tool to reach our community. I'm excited in the same way digitally to see what does this tool look like, to continue to reach and connect with people.
How are you going to do that?
We've got some plans and some ideas and thoughts. Some of it is learning from some other churches and seeing what they're doing and how we can apply that. We're trying to figure out how to just even connect with people in the community and let them know we're here even digitally, because so much of it has been like invite people to in person, which I think is still valid. And I don't think that's an invalid point, but how can we invite people even digitally to come be a part of what we're doing and in the community? And I think that can be, if people are there, they live digitally, and we have the opportunity to invite them and them to connect. Because how many times have we heard the story where someone finally comes, and visits in person, and it's like it connects, and then it just, the Spirit moves in their life, and let's see what this looks like digitally. Let's invite some people to attend and connect with us digitally, and allow the Spirit to move. And we're not trying to sell them something. We just truly want them to have an encounter with God, just like we would if they would be coming in person to visit us at the school or in an anywhere group. So
right.
That's what I'm excited about is trying some of those things out and figuring out how we can begin to use that on-ramp to really reach and connect.
And through social media.
Yep, social media, through YouTube, all those platforms, all the content and all the things that people are out there and live in and have it all in their pocket, right?
Yeah.
The access is always there. It's just learning how to reach them where they're at.
I remember being in Jamaica on our honeymoon, Lauren and I, 16 years ago.
We went to Jamaica on our honeymoon too.
Where'd you go?
Ocho Rios.
Oh, okay. Yo comprendo español un poquito. What does Ocho Rios mean? Ochos is 8. 8 rios, 8 birds, rivers, 8 rivers. Rios. You remember wasn't Rio a bird or something in a Disney Pixar film?
Disney Rio. Yes, we stayed at 8 birds. And all the native Spanish speakers are like, oh my Lord, get these clowns off here.
Oh man, my broken Spanish has gotten me into trouble a couple times.
No hablo español.
Yes. We were like way south. I think Ocho Rios is west, or is that northeast?
I don't really remember.
We were way down south, so we had to drive all the way through.
Right.
And you see how people are living around the world, and people are taking baths in creeks, like as we're going down. Like,
right. We saw people bathing in the ocean.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's probably healthy in some way.
Yeah.
But like as they, you see that, and then you see a woman on the side. And she's like looking at her cell phone. And that was, 2006.
Right.
I remember having the thought, I was like, man, the first person who can reach people on their phones is going to reach the world.
Right.
Because
so this is where they're at.
Yeah, this is the way it was. And that's come to pass. But I think what I love about your Heart for Digital, I know, and I've really liked this, is that you're focusing locally.
Right.
Because I think the mindset is, we can get so many people out there all over the place.
Like world domination online.
Right.
Yeah.
But just reach people where they are, but where you are.
Right.
And I love that.
Right.
I love how you frame that.
Right. Yeah, it's in the same way, we would have a building or a physical location to reach people in our community. I think digital is the same opportunity. We can reach people. Just because it's digital doesn't mean that, that we're targeting people who are far away. We still want to reach our community.
Right.
Still a local church.
Yes. And here's an aspect of this that I really love. You have an individual who, say they are at Jamaica, and they're traveling there from our local church, Right. They can actually jump on the online platform and welcome people and be a part of the team from wherever they are. And so they might be helping somebody to connect, or they might say something, hey, this was something that stuck out to me, or something that actually helps somebody who's on that online platform. And it's eliminating the complete disconnect that we might feel over the summer with people who travel.
Right.
I want people to travel. I want people to have memories.
Right.
As a pastor, I don't want to guilt them.
They have to attend every Sunday.
They better be there.
52
because I need my validation by how many heads are in the room. 52 weeks out of the year.
You're pulling back the layers too much.
Too much.
Letting them in.
Maybe a little bit at a time.
Yeah. Censor that out, Caleb. Too much truth. Too much truth.
Yeah, man. I want people to enjoy life. I want people to experience life. I want them to stay connected, and I want them to help and serve people as well. And I think it's really, really wise just to, I like how you said it, just, we've got to stay spirit led. We've got to allow the Lord to lead us in developing this,
Right. Right. Yeah. I think there's that posture of humility in anything we do, and anything new like digital and figuring that out should be the exact same posture.
Yeah. Yeah. So, man, good job, man. I really, I love your heart, Brian. I love how you think things through, and just as you at HQ, you were just methodical. You just kind of built things. Mm-hmm. Slow over time, and then the next day you're like, was there an elf here overnight? Like, he just built a rocking chair out of a bookshelf.
Yeah, where'd you get the
45
wood?
minutes last night or whatever. I slept the whole 45 minutes. You know?
I'm rested. I got a full 45
But that's a gift that you are, man. Like, you figure things out. You think things through, right. And it's so cool. If there's anybody doing it, I'm so glad it's you. I'm so glad God's chosen you to do that, because I think you can have a capacity to dream about the future, but be practical in where we are, and then build the plans to get there. Right. And especially in this area, like, Caleb was obviously brilliant and awesome. And you've got such a good team of people from, live streams on Sundays. And all of that.
Absolutely.
And that is...
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and you've got like probably another $100,000 that you wish that you had for technology and equipment, and but you're doing a really great job, man.
Right,
man. I appreciate you. I appreciate your thoughtfulness, and I know that it's going to bless people today.
Absolutely.
So, anything before we go?
No. Likewise, just appreciate it. Love what we're doing, and the whole idea of seeking God and trying to figure this out, and just, yourself leading us in that example of being like, we don't have this figured out. We're by no means the authority in all this. We're just, humbly seeking God and being led by His Spirit, and I think that enables all of us, myself included, to be able to do that. It gives us that opportunity of, not just being like, here's all the answers, and or even having the appearance of like we've got it all figured out. I think that's great. And that's such a healthy thing for us as a church. And it's great, and it allows people like myself and everyone on the team, afford that opportunity then to individually in our own areas we've been assigned or that we lead to do the same thing. We're seeking after God. We're trying to figure it out. We're learning from others. We're open-handed with all of this. We've, got the ability to learn and experiment and try things and pivot, and that's a really awesome place to be. And I love that for us as a team, and I love that for the people who are connected with Hill City. It's great. It's a good environment to be in.
Yeah, it is, man. It is. No striving, just being led by the Spirit, and we're thinking things through. We're not blaming being led by the Spirit, and not having a plan.
The Spirit led me off a cliff.
You told me. Prepare to be led. You prepare, and God will lead you, and prepare your heart to be led.
Right, and He's given us a mind, and He's given us wisdom, and and it's coupled with all of those things. Absolutely.
Yep. Proud of you, man. Way to go. There's so many things that we could talk about, but we can pick it up another day.
For another time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We have plenty of years to work together, that's for sure. So appreciate you, Brian. Good job today, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Thanks, Caleb.